In today's episode of Slim Shadetree Mechanics, we're going to change the heater core out of a 2004 Ford Explorer. Now there's a lot of stuff that has to be removed in order to change the heater core, and I'm pretty convinced that when they designed these vehicles, they started with the heater core and wrapped the car around it. Now the first thing we have to do is disconnect the battery. There's a lot of electrical components that have to be removed, and the last thing you want is to have the airbags explode in your face as you're removing them. So I like to disconnect the battery. When I disconnect the battery, I always disconnect the negative side as opposed to the positive side, because the entire car is grounded. The chassis is grounded to the battery. And if you remove the positive side, there's a slim chance that your tool might hit a piece of the car. The next thing you're going to want to do is drain all the fluid out of the radiator. And at the bottom of the radiator, most radiators have this, there's a little plug that you turn. A lot of times it's hand tight, and you just open it up and you can let out all the coolant. Once you get everything cleaned up in the front seat, we're ready to go and start taking things out. So now comes the fun part. We basically have to disassemble the entire dashboard and the instrument panel and all the kick panels out of the way to get to the heater core. So when doing a job like this, it's always a good idea to get a manual. There's a lot of manuals out there for every vehicle. And because there's so many different steps and every vehicle is different, it's always a good idea to review it as opposed to just tearing things off and breaking them. This is my lovely lovely assistant Lolo, and she often helps me with some of these things.
This car is disgusting.
Oh.
You need a vacuum.
All right, so I swear I know what I'm doing. I think. All right, so the next thing that has to come off is this kick panel here. Of course, this is in the way. Okay, so we got these two bolts right here. Of course, it's not an 8mm. Ford had a really good idea, and they used a 7mm for a lot of their small bolts. So let's see if we can just... There's a little tray that has a magnet on it. The only annoying thing is that all the tools stick to it. All of your screws inside of the tray, so you don't lose them all, because you know what's going to happen if you throw stuff all over the place. You only have half the bolts to... So, as I kind of suspected, we have to remove the steering column first to safely take out this instrument panel cover. There's no way I can disconnect the wiring harness behind it unless the steering column is removed. So let's get the steering column out of the way. I like to put some white out right at the joint. I mean, it's going to be pretty obvious later, but I know what will happen, just because I haven't taken this off before, is that if I don't do this, something stupid will happen and I'll get it in the wrong spot. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the screws that hold the bottom cover. Apparently there's a clip behind here. It's really tough to get out. I hate it when they do these stupid clips that make it very difficult to get out. Press the back of the clip. Well, God, pain in the ass. One important thing to mention is that you got to take the string off of the gear shifter. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is remove the bolt going to the steering yoke.
Wow.
Here's a ringing.
Oh boy.
Pain in the fucking oh my god. Come on. Don't give you enough room to get it out without bending the part. Literally. So, that was a pain in the neck. Alright, so let's get this out of the way.
Just happy as a cow chewing on a cud when the darkest beat the beat on the Mississippi mud. Lordy, how they play, boy, they really sway.
Okay, so we're going to start loosening up these main bolts here for the entire dashboard. Probably a couple other bolts, but with something this heavy, I like to leave a bolt halfway threaded in so that I don't want this thing to give way and then have all other electrical connectors break. So got all the bolts undone, but this instrument panel still won't move. Let's see if the book has something that we're missing. Cowl bolts are located behind the wiper motor. The wiper motor, remove the cowl bolts. Cowl bolts are located behind the wiper motor. That means I gotta take that off. Ah. Now I'm generally a big fan of Ford trucks. This Explorer drives like a tank in the snow, which is really nice. But sometimes they do things that are really stupid. Like for instance, to take the dashboard out, I got to take one bolt out that's behind the wiper motor. In order to get to the wiper motor, I got to take the wiper blades off. Now try to figure that one out. To put the heater core in, I got to take the wiper blades out. Alright, so this is day 2 of this crazy job. We got to take off the windshield wiper blades. So is just push this little tab over and then it should pop right out. So not a big deal.
Boy, that music thrills me. Say it nearly kills me.
What a dance do they do? Lordy, how I'm telling.
There's the bolt, the one bolt that's behind the windshield wiper motor that has to be removed in order to get the dash out. So we're just going to undo this. Okay, I think we're ready to pull this thing off. Just a quick recap. Most important thing is to make sure that all the electrical connectors are disconnected. There's a big connector on the bottom here, right next to the emergency brake. You want to make sure that you disconnect the wire going to the gas pedal. Big connector on this side. There's another large junction box on this side that you need to disconnect. And I believe you still got to take out these two right here for your grounding straps. Okay, in times like this, it's always nice to have a lovely assistant. So let's see if we can pull this off. I think that everything is free. We're going to find out very shortly. Okay, so we're going to grab onto the edge here, over here. Okay, we're going to get that tube out of the way.
God, how are you going to remember how all this stuff goes back in?
It's just like an erector set. Just a bunch of parts.
Oh, there's a...
Okay.
This guy.
Anything else?
Yeah, this guy.
Orange.
Orange.
Right, that's the antenna. Okay, so I'm gonna push that wire towards you. You got it. Good.
Got it.
Got it.
Oh my God.
All right, and there it is. What a joke. All to get to the heater core.
I'll go get the vacuum.
Yeah. Okay, now when removing the dashboard, two things that made this a real big pain in the neck was a clip that held this on, which was right here. That was a royal pain in the neck. It must have been like an afterthought because this little bracket is bolted on the inside, which is impossible to get to. And trying to get a tool in to squeeze that was really difficult. Okay, so that was step 7, remove the instrument panel. Now the next thing that we have to do is get the housing for the heater core out of the way and all the ductwork so that we can actually get to the heater core. So the next thing we have to do is disconnect the heater hoses going to the 2 tubes that lead to the heater core on the inside of the vehicle. These hoses are located right here on a firewall. So, you know, I was looking at this and I was wondering, you know, why the heck did we have to take the entire dashboard off in order? Well, I'll show you why. Because if we take the heater core and we try to fit it up in here, and I'm doing this with one hand, so it's a little awkward. So, anyway, we could almost get it in because the heater core is supposed to go in right here. But there's one problem. I mean, we can get those tubes through the firewall, but the issue is this stupid bracket right here. And that's why I have to take the entire dashboard out, because of this bracket. It's just in the way and you can't get it in there. If the heater core was in, I wouldn't have been able to get it out. So that's the entire reason why you have to take the entire dashboard out, is because of that stupid bracket. Not for nothing, if I was ever going to do this again, what I would probably do is end up cutting these 2 lines and putting a little hose here with a couple clamps. Would probably have saved about 8 hours worth of time. So in a nutshell, that is why you have to take the entire dashboard off in order to get that heater core out. Make sure that the 2 tubes are sticking out of the firewall and they're pushed in all the way. Now comes the fun part of putting this cover back on the entire heater core evaporator housing. I'm basically going to pry this up a little bit so that I can get this cover on. It's really tight and it's kind of a pain in the neck. Now they want you to go behind a firewall, behind a motor, and loosen up all these bolts and basically move this entire thing up in order for you to do this. But that's like that's a pain in the neck because you got to dislocate your arm trying to loosen up those bolts behind the engine. Now it seems to be working here as I'm just taking a pry bar and I'm basically prying up the entire housing. I tell you, they don't give you much room. Snap it, ship it. If it breaks, just buy next year's model. You know, these guys that put these manuals together, it's amazing that they can do it with a straight face. Alright, so we got the cover for the heater core on, and that's it. Now we just basically reassemble the car. Get out of the car, please. Get out of the car, please. Get out of the car. Thank you. Okay, now this is a very important step. The whole car is buttoned up. We're ready to fill up the reservoir with coolant. Now you want to make sure that you put the right coolant in there. This particular vehicle uses a dexcool type of coolant, which has some silicone in it. They use it for aluminum block engines to try to cut down on corrosion. Anyway, it's an orange color, and you don't want to mix an orange coolant with a green glycol coolant. What happens is that it can coagulate, and it can clog up the heater core, which is exactly what happened in this vehicle. A long time ago, this was brought to a shop, and the guy put in green coolant inside of the reservoir, and what happened is it all clogged up, and that's why the heater core had to be replaced. Okay, well, here goes nothing. We're going to try to turn the car on. Now, Ford had this crazy thing that happened to them in the 70s. They had a vehicle called the Pinto that when it got rear-ended, a lot of times the car would catch on fire. In order to prevent that from happening, they put in a fuel safety switch, which is something that we removed. Now, a lot of times when you remove the switch, it trips the switch. It basically feels a jostle or something, and it disconnects the fuel pump. Now, the fuel safety switch is located right here by the passenger kick panel, and it feels like it's up. So we're going to push it down, and let's see if the car starts. Okay, now we're going to try to start the car up again. Okay, now the trick here is that we need to be able to try to bleed the coolant out of the system. Unfortunately, they did not provide a bleeder on this vehicle. And you look inside of the reservoir and see if the coolant level is going down. When the thermostat opens up, it will introduce coolant inside of the motor, and then you just add more coolant. Another trick you can do is to squeeze the top radiator hose and try to get some of the air out. This is very good, both at a comfort level and domestically. Now the rest of the family wants to drive with me in this car in the wintertime. It's really warm in here, but just so you know, I'm not pulling your chain. I'm going to put a thermometer inside, and you can see it's raising up. So there it is, all done. There's your dinner. That was pretty crazy, and because of all the stuff that needed to happen, you now realize why this job costs $1,500 if you go to the dealership. So we just saved $1,500.